Good morning. I'm Irv Lacho, one of the members of the UUCA Board of Trustees. Whether you are a regular attendee or are joining us for the first time, I bid you welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington. Wherever you live, I'm guessing that you've been experiencing some excitement over the last couple weeks as our nation has gone through an election and its aftermath. At the same time, cases of COVID have skyrocketed, and we're heading into the dark days of late fall. There's a lot to be worried about. At the same time, there's so much to be grateful for, from the beauty of a fall day with its rainbow of colors filling the trees to the sweet smell of pumpkin pie wafting in from the kitchen. And of course, we are all so blessed to have this beloved community that holds us in its loving embrace as we seek to find comfort, serve the cause of social justice, and explore our spiritual horizons. We hope you will join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour. Please continue to watch your inbox and visit our Facebook page to stay up to date on the many ways that UUCA is staying active and building the beloved community.
Welcome to my sanctuary. Welcome to this small corner of our home, a corner that my wife Susan and I have set aside for meditation and prayer. By setting aside space in our home, we make a visible reminder to ourselves to set aside time in our lives, set aside time for quiet inner reflection. As you can see, we've got numerous small objects, tokens that evoke personal remembrance and meanings, and thus contribute to the making of a reverential setting. Of course, we have a chalice, one that I will light shortly as we rededicate our hearts to each other. But I call us to worship this morning with words by the poet Starhawk. She speaks of community as sanctuary, a home of belonging. We of UUCA can certainly relate to this as we come together virtually as a communal sanctuary of committed, loving hearts. Starhawk writes, "We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned that we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us, eyes will light up as we enter, voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done, arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free." Welcome to our beloved community. Please come in, sit down, and rest. Let us worship together in the name of all that is holy. As we enter into sacred time, I invite you to join me in lighting our chalice. Perhaps you may wish to light a chalice candle at home so that you too may feel the physical warmth of our presence. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Hi everybody! I'm going to tell you a story today that was inspired by real events. This is a story about two high school boys in Nova Scotia, Canada, who created a sea of pink in 2007. The story is one I found in the Tapestry of Faith newsletter, and it's called A Sea of Pink. It was written by Elise Davy Pierming. On the first day of junior high, Fom was nervous, so he wore his favorite pink t-shirt for good luck. As Fom followed the signs to his new homeroom, he realized how big the 7th and 8th graders were. He didn't see any of his friends, and he felt kinda scared. Then, a group of tall, older kids were surrounding him. "Hey," they said, "boys don't wear pink in this school." "Yeah," said another, "if you do it again, there's gonna be trouble." Now, Fom was really scared. The kids called him names and said other mean things until a teacher's voice called, "Hey, break it up." The gang of kids moved off, and Fom looked for the teacher, but no one was around. Fom sighed. Maybe she didn't see me, he thought. But luckily, some other students had seen Fom, and 2 of them came over. Fom started to walk away, but one put out their hand. "Hey, I'm Tracy, and this is David. We saw what happened. What did those kids say to you?" Fom told them what they said about his shirt, and about the mean names they called him. "That's ridiculous," said Tracy. "You can wear whatever you want to this school. Can we walk with you to your next class?" Fom felt better with Tracy and David around, so they walked Fom to homeroom. "We'll keep an eye out for you," they promised. After school, Tracy and David went to David's house. "It makes me so mad that a few bullies tell everyone what they can and can't wear," said David. "Yeah, but what can we do?" asked Tracy. "We could tell the teachers," David suggested. "But they'd still do it, just after school," said Tracy. "We need to take it to the people," David suggested. A look of excitement grew on Tracy's face. "Let's ask all our friends to wear pink on Monday." "Yeah," smiled David, "but not just our friends. Let's ask everyone." Tracy grinned. "I can see it now. A sea of pink." David and Tracy asked their friends to help them buy 75 t-shirts for kids who didn't have pink. Then they sent out the word on social media to everyone. The next Monday, David and Tracy were at school early with their boxes of pink t-shirts. Many kids arrived with pink t-shirts on, and kids who didn't have one could take one from the boxes. Some kids used pink fabric to make armbands. One kid brought a pink basketball to recess. At least 400 of the students, over half of them, wore pink. That day in school, the bullies gave the kids in pink dirty looks, but people paid no attention. David and Tracy's message had been sent and received. A message about bullying and people looking out for each other. It made almost everyone in the school feel happier. Fom wore his favorite pink t-shirt that day, under a sweatshirt. When he saw how many kids wore pink, he took off his sweatshirt and wore his good luck t-shirt proudly. I like this story because David and Tracy teach us some really important lessons. First, they teach us about how important it is to listen to people after they've been hurt. After those bullies were mean to Fom, David and Tracy went right to him and listened about what happened. Then, they decided they wanted to get lots of people on their side. So they figured out a way to do that so everybody could show their support, even people who didn't have a pink shirt. David and Tracy had one ready for them, so they could decide to be supportive. And David and Tracy told Pham they would continue to have his back. They understood that they're a community that looks out for each other. I wonder if you've ever had something happen that made you feel alone. I hope you were able to find someone to listen to you. And I hope that if you ever see someone being hurt, that you can take the first step and listen to them. I bet they could help you come up with some ideas for what they want to have happen next. What's most important is remembering that people that care about each other look out for each other. Sometimes that means speaking up when you see someone being hurt. Sometimes it means being a good friend and making sure you listen to them. Here at UUCA, part of what we are all learning together, grown-ups and kids, is how to best look out for and care for everyone. Thanks for helping us learn how to do that together.
Reverend Amanda, in her introduction to the upcoming Families and Politics workshop, wrote, and I quote, "As UUs, we pride ourselves in being bridge builders, reaching out to the forgotten, embracing the marginalized and oppressed, providing a safe harbor for those among us who have not previously found safety." This statement is certainly true of UUCA. It speaks of our long list of outreach accomplishments, a list that includes the following recent highlights. We, UUCA, mailed over 21,000 postcards and made thousands of phone calls as part of the national UU the Vote initiative. We organized with Voice to win a Virginia statewide moratorium on COVID-related evictions, enabling tens of thousands of families to remain in their homes. Voice, by the way, teaches relationship building and listening skills, the so-called radical tools of organizing and community development. We distribute food, and many of us volunteer, buy groceries, and financially support our local food banks. And we join with our interfaith community in worship, meditation, and prayer. For these reasons and many more, I am grateful to be able to give UUCA my financial support. We have many ways to give. You can mail a check to the church, payable to UUCA with the word offering or pledge in the memo line. You can give online at the church website, uucava.org. Just click on the donate button at the top of the page. You can donate using the mobile app Give Plus, or by text or by PayPal. Look in our Connections newsletter for the links that work best for you. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others. And so we commit our offering, and so we commit ourselves.
देना मन विजय करे दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे हमको मन की शक्ति देना मन विजय करे दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे हमको मन की शक्ति देना भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सकें। भेद भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके, दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके, झूठ से बचे रहें, सच का दम भरें, झूठ से बचे रहें, सच का दम भरें, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करें। हमको मन की शक्ति देना। मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पे इतना कर्म कर, मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पे इतना कर्म कर, साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर, खुद पे हौसला रहे, बदी से ना डरें, खुद पे हौसला रहे, बदी से ना डरें, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करें। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करें, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करें।
Please join me in the spirit of meditation and of prayer. I invite you now to get comfortable in your seats. Settle in. I invite you to just plant your feet firmly on the ground. Straighten up your spine a little if you are able. To take in a deep breath. Notice your body in this moment. Feel where the tensions are, where the small aches are, and breathe into them. Spirit of life and of love, God by many names and uncontained. sit with us in this moment. When there is so much ache in the world, when there is so much chaos, we simply turn to our grounding breath. To remind us that all we can do is to take it in, let it become part of us, and let it go. We hold in our community all of those suffering with loss, the loss of a loved one, whether through death or simply by absence. The loss of connection that so many of us are feeling in these times. And for some of us, simply the loss of joy. May we remember that as a community, we are here for each other. May we not only comfort those who come to us, but may we seek comfort amongst our community. This week we have honored those who have served their country, who have put their lives on the line for a belief. We think of the veterans who have served this country wishing to uphold the ideals of justice and of equality. We remember that not all who serve fight, that many who serve work to preserve peace, to preserve the ideals that we all hold dear. May we be as blessed as they are in their devotion of service. May we live our lives fully, doing everything we can for what we believe in. We take a breath. We exhale. We let their work be a part of us. We let their lives be a part of us. May we too go out into the world to serve. May we too go out into the world and do what we can to make this world a better place. Blessed be. May it be so.
So
Recently, the media has been abuzz with the question, how do we heal the divide after the election? With Thanksgiving coming, it's not surprising that many of us have the ideas of unity and peacekeeping on our mind. Many of us are probably considering doing some sort of family gathering perhaps this year, and maybe we're beginning to wonder about that one relative, the one who we meet every year, who has the tendency to try our patience just a little bit. Do we once again offer an olive branch in hopes of the best this year? Or perhaps this year we decide to rely on the safety of social distancing and give it a miss. Every year, it's the same question. Do I stay at the table to maintain a relationship, or do I leave the table for my own personal sanity? Might not surprise many of you to know that my soft heart has always leaned on the side of love, leaning towards forgiveness. After practicing this art repeatedly over the years with various family members, and of course, asking in return for those family members to forgive me, I've learned that often the best way to keep the peace is to avoid certain topics of discussion altogether with my extended family. Mostly, we stay away from the topics of parenting advice and financial advice. We tend to stick to the topics that we can all agree on. Politics, luckily, for the most part, travel routes to and from Western Pennsylvania, and for the most part, the record of the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. Sticking to these simple rules keeps everything as comfortable as possible with extended family. As comfortable as one can be with extended family. And that's the key word I want us to focus on a little bit. That idea of comfort. In the interests of preserving peace, we'll often avoid what's uncomfortable. We can avoid the difficult when possible. We avoid stirring up trouble. I think a lot of us right now are really sick of trouble. It feels like lately there has been nothing but trouble for the last year. The coronavirus, the protests in the streets for racial justice, and of course, the election. I don't know about you, but I'm done. It's been at least 9 months of chaos. So can we just please get some peace and quiet? Can we have a national time out and just play nice and quietly with each other just for a little while? So I understand that call for unity after the election, because it is something that I too personally deeply long for. I understand this desire to forgive and move on because the weight of holding a grudge is exhausting. I understand the idea and desire to get things to a comfortable level because my spiritual and emotional muscles ache from holding this tension. And I understand the desire to put aside difficult topics and just sit at the table, have a nice meal, and just talk about the weather. I want to forgive and move on. It sounds so good, but in reality, it never works. Not really. Like I said, I have a few issues that I try not to discuss
around certain members of extended family. And some of you may be familiar and have a similar situation. And what usually ends up happening when you promise not to talk about these topics is you bite your tongue when they come up and you just let it gnaw at you. Or you finally speak your mind and that conflict bubbles up. It's the pattern of gnawing silence or uncomfortable conflict, and it continues over and over and over again for eternity until the issue is either resolved or you decide that your opinion just isn't worth fighting about anymore. And I want to say that there are some opinions that it's okay not to fight over anymore. Some things are worth letting go. I will never, ever convince my stepfather of the greatness that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. He will forever be a Minnesota Vikings fan. And I can let that go. But some things are worth holding on to. Some things are so vital to our identity and our morality that our own silence on the topic makes us uncomfortable. That is when we need the most to stay at the table. Sometimes this term, staying at the table, conjures up feelings of keeping this precious ideal to yourself in order to save a relationship. In truth, staying at the table is much more of an active thing than that. You stay at the table after the meal has been served, after the dishes have been cleared, and after everyone else is gone. You stay at the table in order to have the difficult conversation with someone in order to get to a mutual understanding. You stay at the table in order to resolve the conflict, not to just ignore it. Now, I want to be clear about who I'm talking about here in this we stay at the table. All right? When I say we, I mean the people who would be allies. When it comes to matters of social justice and this hard work of confrontation, in this situation, I would not ask a black person to defend Black Lives Matter to a white person who considers BLM to be a terrorist group. Chances are that that white person is going to say some pretty hurtful things that no person of color should have to hear. I would not ask someone who is genderqueer to stay at the table with someone who considers them to be less than human. Confrontations like these with people on the margins and people with privilege have been shown medically to take years off of people's lives, the lives of those with marginalized identities. To ask people on the margins to stay at the table with people who want nothing but conflict with them is simply cruel. I am not asking them to stay at the table. As a person of privilege, I would not do that. I also want to talk a little bit about this idea about staying at the table. It calls for togetherness and unity. These calls of people wanting to stay at the table, these calls of people who want healing to begin, these calls I have heard mostly from mainstream privileged identities. And maybe that's just the water I swim in. Maybe I'm missing the calls from people on the margins who want to go to the table, who want to have a time of healing and put their differences aside. But I see this idea of wanting to push some of these things aside, mostly from people of privilege, people who look like myself and live in that comfortable bubble. And I'm sure everybody wants a world where everyone is treated with worth and dignity. But I have to imagine that people with marginalized identities who have been systematically oppressed are much less interested of having a thoughtful discussion about their own humanity at the table. I have to believe that people with marginalized identities are much more interested in not being shot by police, not being discriminated against for who they love, and not being persecuted for their own gender identity. For those on the margins who are fighting for their lives, the table is an afterthought. In my straight, white, male opinion, in my opinion of privilege, the table is my straight, white, male, privileged responsibility. It is the responsibility of those of us with privilege to further equity and compassion in the world, to talk to those who have privilege like us, to stay at the table and having difficult conversations with our peers of privilege is not our first responsibility even when it comes to privilege. Laura gave us a great lesson today on what that first priority should be when it comes to justice. And that first priority is to center the voices from the margins. In our story, David and Tracy saw what happened, and instead of having that difficult conversation with the bullies about how really pink is for everyone, they checked on Fam. They listened to him. They made sure he was okay. They didn't focus on how bad the bullies were. They didn't talk about how Tracy and David had also been bullied and they know exactly what that person was going through. They focused on Fam and his safety. And their second priority, after listening to him, was to form a coalition around him. They found people who would support them and their pink cause. Not just bring awareness to the issue, but to build support and take action to change the culture of anti-pinkness in this instance. Those are our first two and most important steps in justice work. Listen to those who have been hurt and oppressed by systems and build support around them. You'll notice in Laura's story, they didn't include a chapter where Tracy and David decide they want to have a heart-to-heart talk with the bullies and ask them where their pink bias comes from. They certainly didn't tell Fam in the story that he should have that heart-to-heart talk. Why do you think that is? The bullies in this tale would never come to the table in this case. They just couldn't be bothered. It's the great thing about a two-dimensional bad guy. This is the biggest thing, though, we need to remember when it comes to staying at the table. Some people don't want to come to the table. No matter how many facts you give someone, no matter how many stories you tell someone about an issue, no matter how earnest you are, no matter how much you try to connect with their humanity, there are some people who just don't want to hear it. They don't want to come to the table. And the sad thing is, friends, there is nothing you can do about it. This call for unity and forgiveness, this call for peace, the call for healing that we are all dying for, some of us quite literally, This has to come from both sides. The idea that one side can just pretend away our differences with people who don't want to hear us, that idea needs to stop. It is a toxic part of white culture that insists if we play nice and ignore it, it will go away. Those of us raised in whiteness cannot ignore our way into a just and equitable world. We of privilege will have to have some difficult conversations with our siblings of privilege if we are ever to achieve the world of peace and unity that we seek. I regret that I do not have the magic words that will convince your intractable friends that Black Lives Matter. I regret that I do not have the words that will convince them that gender fluidity isn't a passing fad. I regret that I don't have the words to convince people that the system of policing in this country is deeply flawed and broken. If I had those words to convince people of this, I would put them in every newspaper, on every radio station, on every television show. I would write them on pieces of scrap paper and hand them out on the metro. I would tattoo them on my forehead. But there simply are no magic words to change the hearts and minds. There is just us. Just the people of privilege maintaining relationships with those who are our privileged peer group. So for my friends of privilege, the only way you're going to change anyone's mind is to be in relationship with them. Now, I want you to know that doesn't mean compromising your values. I hope the one thing you take away from this is you cannot be silenced in order to just maintain the peace. Just the opposite when you're in relationship with these people. You still need to voice your disdain for systems of oppression. You still need to let them know when they say or do things that prop up these systems. And if that relationship that the two of you have, if it is important to the both of you, and you both want that relationship to survive and even to thrive, you will both come to the table and sit and have the difficult conversations. If both parties have a desire to listen and work towards peace, you have a chance of coming to a good resolution. And I encourage you, if you have those relationships, to use them. But if you don't have goodwill on both sides, it's okay to walk away. There's no sense in getting angry or hurt and depressed. There's no sense in arguing until you turn blue for nothing. It's okay to say, I cannot be in this relationship with you. I want us all to play nice. I really do. I want to stop living in a world that is always on fire. I want to stop marching and protesting and writing letters to elected officials. And I want to stop having difficult family conversations. I am so tired of it all. But those on the margins have been fighting these systems of oppression for centuries. And while we of privilege are fighting for justice, those who have been oppressed are fighting for their lives. So like David and Tracy, listen to their voices. When called, wear your pink shirt. Encourage your friends to do the same. Because in order for there to be peace and justice in this world, in order for things to really, truly quiet down, we need to work for justice first. After that, we can, all of us, sit at the table. For the benediction this morning, I want to leave you with the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. This is a favorite quote of mine, and I think it applies today when we talk about the power of our relationships and the love we have for justice. Power without love is abusive and reckless, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands for love. Use the power you have to bring love into this world, friend. Blessed be. May it be so.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until the killing of a black man a storm. We who believe in freedom and unrest. We who believe in freedom and unrest until last. Not needing too much for power, needing a light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself